All right, guys, welcome back. We are reading Holes by Louis Sachar. We are on chapter 44. This is video 2. Stanley and Hector are digging in what Stanley hoped was the right hole, trying to find Kissin' Kate Barlow's treasure. And they have hit something hard. Let's see what it is. Page 201. It was sticking out of the side of the hole, about 1.5 feet from the bottom. He felt it with his hands. "What is it?" Zero asked. He could just feel a corner of it. Most of it was still buried. It had the cool, smooth texture of metal. "I think I might have found the treasure chest," he said. His voice was filled more with astonishment than with excitement. "Really?" asked Zero. "I think so," Stanley said. The hole was wide enough for him to hold the shovel lengthwise and dig sideways into the wall. He knew he had to dig very carefully. He didn't want the side of the hole to collapse, along with the huge pile of dirt directly above it. He scraped at the dirt wall until he exposed one entire side of the box-like object. He ran his fingers over it. It felt to be about 8 inches tall and almost 2 feet wide. He had no way of knowing how far into the earth it extended. He tried pulling it out, but it wouldn't budge. He was afraid that the only way to get it was to start back up at the surface and dig down. They didn't have time for that. "I'm going to try to dig a hole underneath it," he said. "Then maybe I can pull it down and slip it out." "Go for it," said Zero. Stanley jammed the shovel into the bottom edge of his hole and carefully began to dig a tunnel underneath the metal object. He hoped it didn't cave in. Occasionally, he'd stop, stoop down, and try to feel the far end of the box. But even when the tunnel was as long as his arm, he still couldn't feel the other side. Once again, he tried pulling it out, but it was firmly in the ground. If he pulled too hard, he feared he'd cause a cave-in. He knew that when he was ready to pull it out, he would have to do it quickly before the ground above it collapsed. As his tunnel grew deeper and wider and more precarious, Stanley was able to feel latches on one end of the box and then a leather handle. It wasn't really a box. "I think it might be some kind of metal suitcase," he told Zero. "Can you pry it loose with a shovel?" Zero suggested. "I'm afraid the side of the hole will collapse." "You might as well give it a try," said Zero. Stanley took a sip of water. "Might as well," he said. He forced the tip of the shovel between the dirt and the top of the metal case and tried to wedge it free. He wished he could see what he was doing. He worked on the end of the shovel, back and forth, up and down, until he felt the suitcase fall free. Then he felt the dirt come piling down on top of it. But it wasn't a huge cave-in. As he knelt down in the hole, he could tell that only a small portion of the earth had collapsed. He dug with his hands until he found the leather handle, and then he pulled the suitcase up and out of the dirt. "I got it!" he exclaimed. It was heavy. He handed it up to Zero. "You did it," Zero said, taking it from him. "We did it," said Stanley. He gathered his remaining strength and tried to pull himself up out of the hole. Suddenly, a bright light was shining in his face. "Thank you," said the warden. "You boys have been a big help." Oh no, so the warden has caught them. Let's see what happens. Chapter 45. The beam of the flashlight was directed away from Stanley's eyes and on to Zero, who was sitting on his knees. The suitcase was on his lap. Mr. Pendanski was holding the flashlight. Mr. Sir stood next to him with his gun drawn and pointed in the same direction. Mr. Sir was barefoot and bare-chested, wearing only his pajama bottoms. The warden moved towards Zero. She was also in her bedclothes, wearing an extra long t-shirt. Unlike Mr. Sir, however, she had on her boots. Mr. Pendanski was the only one fully dressed. Perhaps he had been on guard duty. Off in the distance, Stanley could see 2 more flashlights bobbing toward them in the darkness. He felt helpless in the hole. "You boys arrived just in the nick," the warden started to say. She stopped talking and stopped walking. Then she slowly backed away. A lizard had crawled up on top of the suitcase. Its big red eyes glowed in the beam of the flashlight. Its mouth was open, and Stanley could see its white tongue moving in and out between its black teeth. Zero sat as still as a statue. A second lizard crawled up over the side of the suitcase and stopped less than an inch away from Zero's little finger. Stanley was afraid to look and afraid not to. He wondered if he should try to scramble out of the hole before the lizards turned on him, but he didn't want to cause any commotion. The second lizard crawled across Zero's fingers and halfway up his arm. It occurred to Stanley that the lizards were probably on the suitcase when he handed it to Zero. "There's another one," gasped Mr. Pendanski. He shined the flashlight on the box of frosted flakes, which lay on its side beside Stanley's hole. A lizard was crawling out of it. The light also illuminated Stanley's hole. He glanced downward and had to force himself to suppress a scream. He was standing in a lizard nest. He felt the scream explode inside him. He could see 6 lizards. There were 3 on the ground, 2 on his left leg, and 1 on his right sneaker. He tried to remain very still. Something was crawling up the back of his neck. 3 other counselors approached the area. Stanley heard one say, "What's going?" and then whisper, "Oh my God." "What do we do?" asked Mr. Pendanski. "We wait," said the warden. "It won't be very long." "At least we'll have a body to give that woman," said Mr. Pendanski. "She's going to ask a lot of questions," said Mr. Sir. "And this time she'll have the AG with her." "Let her ask her questions," said the warden. "Just so long as I have the suitcase. I don't care what happens. Do you know how long?" Her voice trailed off, then started up again. "When I was little, I'd watch my parents dig holes every weekend and holiday. When I got bigger, I had to dig too, even on Christmas." Who does this tell us the warden belongs to? Remember? It won't be long. Stanley felt tiny claws dig into the side of his face as the lizard pulled itself off his neck and up past his chin. "It won't be long now," the warden said. Stanley could hear his heart beat. Each beat told him he was still alive, at least for 1 more second. All right, guys, we're going to leave it there. What do you think is going to happen with poor Stanley and Hector? Not only were they in big enough trouble when all the counselors found them and the warden, they're even in bigger trouble now because the lizards are there. And Stanley is standing in amongst 6 of them. And some of them are climbing up him on his neck and up into his chin area. How do you think they're going to get out of this situation? Or do you think they're going to get out of this situation? What do you think will happen? I want you to write down your predictions. Also, it sounds like somebody's actually looking for either Stanley or Hector. They said at least we'll have a body to give that woman. "She's going to ask a lot of questions," said Mr. Sir, "and this time she'll have the AG with her." I don't know what AG means. Maybe we'll find out later. But some woman is looking, it sounds like, for either Stanley or Hector. Perhaps it's Stanley's mom. What's your guess? So write down your predictions. How do you think the boys will get out of this situation? Or maybe do you believe they won't get out of this situation? They're either going to be bitten by a lizard and die, or they're going to be arrested by the counselors, and I don't know what they would do with them. And also, who do you believe the woman is that's looking for the boys? Okay, I'm going to leave it there. See you next time.